I never imagined that the clatter of digital notifications on my phone could unravel everything I'd so meticulously concealed. It began on an ordinary Tuesday, or so I convinced myself as I sipped lukewarm coffee in my cramped apartment. The morning light filtered through my blinds, creating angular patterns on my desk where my work laptop sat among a scattered array of personal items. My routine was as predictable as the sunrise, but hidden behind the mundane was a secret that had defined the past few months, a secret that was about to be exposed through a series of digital receipts. It started with a buzz on my phone. A single notification, innocuous in its wording, your transaction at eliteevenings.com, $350, 11:47 p.m. I paused, heart fluttering for reasons I couldn't immediately place. Elite Evenings was a service known for its access to the most exclusive parties and high-end events around the globe. I'd used it more than once, always under the careful guise of anonymity, careful to ensure that nothing could be traced back to me. Yet here it was, a digital breadcrumb that traced the steps of my secret rendezvous at a luxury resort after hours. I sat there in stunned silence, watching as more notifications flooded in, another receipt confirming a booking at the resort's hidden lounge, a confirmation of a spa service scheduled for the early hours of the morning, and even a final receipt for a late-night gourmet dinner that I had thought was safely tucked away in my private emails. Each receipt was a testament to an evening I had hoped to keep concealed, a moment of vulnerability and desire that had blossomed under the cloak of darkness. That night, I found myself reliving every detail. I had arrived at the resort in a sleek, black sedan that pulled up discreetly at the valet. The grandeur of the luxury resort was both intimidating and enchanting. Its marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and discreetly guarded entrances created an atmosphere of exclusivity that was as much a part of its charm as the hushed conversations in its corridors. I remember the way my heart pounded as I made my way through the lobby, my pulse syncing with the soft background music that seemed to hum secrets in the air. Inside, I had met him, a man whose presence was as enigmatic as the midnight sky. His eyes, dark and thoughtful, held a promise of unspoken understanding. We had talked in quiet corners of the resort's private dining area, our conversation flowing effortlessly between confessions of past regrets and hopes for the future. The night had unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance, each step measured yet spontaneous, each glance laden with unspoken emotion. I had allowed myself to be drawn in completely, to forget the dangers and repercussions that could follow should anyone ever discover the truth. But secrets, as I was now learning, have a way of resurfacing. The digital receipts were not just pieces of transactional data, they were evidence of a life I had tried so hard to compartmentalize. The thought sent a chill down my spine. My mind raced with the possibilities. Had someone hacked into the system? Was there a leak at the resort? Or worse, had someone discovered my secret on purpose? The realization that my private world was now hanging by a thread was both paralyzing and infuriating. I spent hours scrolling through each receipt, piecing together the timeline of that night. Every digital marker, the timestamps, the amounts, the locations, seemed to paint a vivid picture of my rendezvous. I remembered the whispered promises exchanged over candlelight, the fleeting caresses that promised more than just a temporary escape from my ordinary life. And now, each memory was tethered to a digital record, a reminder that in the modern world, nothing truly disappears. In the days that followed, I struggled with the overwhelming sensation of exposure. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd experience a moment of panic, a flash of anxiety about what other secrets might be laid bare. The receipts had become a symbol of my risk-taking, of the clandestine life I had built to feel something profoundly alive. But as the digital evidence mounted, so did the threat to my carefully constructed persona. I was forced to confront the duality of my existence, the respectable, everyday person by day and the passionate, daring woman by night. I decided to retrace my steps. I logged into my accounts on Elite Evenings and the resort's website, searching for any sign of tampering or unauthorized access. Each click led me deeper into a labyrinth of digital footprints. I discovered that the receipts had been automatically forwarded to my primary email account, a setting I had unwittingly activated when I first set up my account. It was a minor oversight, but in the context of my hidden life, it was catastrophic. The digital records were no longer hidden in a secure folder, they were out in the open, waiting to be discovered by anyone with access to my email. With a sinking heart, I began to wonder who might have access to my emails. Friends? Colleagues? An unknown hacker? The thought of betrayal by someone I trusted made my skin crawl. I recalled the meticulous precautions I had taken to ensure that every interaction was anonymous, yet here I was, exposed by a simple digital error. The irony was not lost on me. the very tools I used to protect my identity had, in one careless moment, become the agents of my undoing. The night at the resort replayed in my mind with an almost cinematic clarity. I remembered the subtle interplay of light and shadow in the private dining room, where soft, ambient lighting had created an atmosphere of intimacy. The conversation had been a delicate dance, filled with moments of silence that spoke louder than words. His presence had been a revelation, a glimpse into a world where passion was not confined by the strict rules of society, where every whispered secret was a testament to a life lived on the edge of convention. I had felt an electric connection, a magnetic pull that promised both danger and delight. And now, that memory was marred by the stark reality of digital traces. I began to question my next steps. Should I confront him about it? Should I reach out to the resort management to see if there was a way to erase these records? Or was it better to try and control the narrative before someone else did? Each option seemed fraught with peril. The risk of exposure was immense, and the consequences could ripple far beyond my personal life, potentially endangering not just my reputation but also my emotional well-being. In the midst of my internal turmoil, I received another notification, a new email subject line that made my blood run cold: security alert, unusual login activity detected. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Had someone been monitoring my digital footprint? The email was from a reputable security service, one I had subscribed to in case of breaches. Its contents were a barrage of technical jargon that I barely understood, but the gist was clear: there was an anomaly in my account's login history, something that didn't fit the pattern of my usual activity. My stomach churned with the realization that I might be facing more than just an inadvertent disclosure of my secret rendezvous. I spent that night in a restless state, barely able to sleep as I considered the potential fallout. The security alert suggested that someone, or something, had accessed my account without authorization. Was it connected to the digital receipts? Was my secret rendezvous being used as bait by someone with more sinister intentions? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that every digital footprint I left was being scrutinized by unseen eyes. The modern world, with its interconnected web of data and surveillance, had turned privacy into a fragile illusion. As dawn approached, I resolved to take decisive action. First, I updated every password associated with my online accounts, turning to a trusted friend who worked in cybersecurity for advice on how best to secure my digital life. Each keystroke was accompanied by a surge of adrenaline and fear, as I wondered if it was already too late to erase the traces of my secret. My friend's reassuring words did little to calm the storm raging inside me. They explained that while digital trails can often be mitigated, completely erasing them is nearly impossible. The very nature of our digital age means that every interaction leaves an indelible mark, a record that can be retrieved, pieced together, and scrutinized. In the following days, I noticed subtle changes in my behavior. I found myself glancing over my shoulder, not just in the physical world but also in the digital realm. Every notification, every email ping, was a potential harbinger of further exposure. I began to live in a state of heightened alertness, the thrill of my secret rendezvous now tainted by the ever-present threat of discovery. The events of that night, once a source of exhilaration and forbidden joy, had morphed into a haunting reminder of the price of living on the edge. The situation escalated when I received a message on an anonymous forum dedicated to digital privacy. The message was brief, a single line that sent shivers down my spine: "We know what you did." It wasn't signed, and it wasn't accompanied by any explanation, but its implication was clear. I wasn't the only one aware of the breach, and someone, somewhere, had taken notice of my activities. The anonymity of the forum provided no comfort. Instead, it deepened the mystery and amplified my anxiety. Who was behind the message? And what did they intend to do with the knowledge they had gleaned from my digital footprints? I began to piece together a theory. My secret rendezvous, once a thrilling escape from my monotonous reality, had become a double-edged sword. It was a source of liberation and passion, yet it was now a vulnerability that could be exploited. The digital receipts, innocuous at first glance, were now evidence in a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, a game in which I was an unwilling participant. The realization was sobering. In a world where every transaction was recorded and every interaction logged, privacy was an illusion. I had tried to create a private sanctuary for my desires, but the modern digital landscape had a way of revealing even the most well-hidden secrets. As the days passed, I found myself oscillating between denial and acceptance. I tried to convince myself that the breach was a one-off incident, an aberration in the otherwise secure system that I had trusted. Yet, the nagging feeling of being exposed persisted, a constant reminder that my secret was now a commodity that others could exploit. I reached out to the resort management in a carefully worded email, inquiring about their data retention policies and the measures they had in place to secure guest information. Their response was prompt but generic, a standard apology for any inconvenience caused and an assurance that everything was under control. The impersonal nature of their reply did little to ease my mounting anxiety. One evening, I sat alone in my favorite corner of a quiet cafe, my mind still haunted by the digital breadcrumbs of that fateful night. I tried to focus on the soothing aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft murmur of conversation around me, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the dark corridors of the luxury resort and the mysterious figures that had played a part in my secret rendezvous. I replayed every conversation, every stolen moment of intimacy, searching for clues or missteps that might explain how my private affair had been compromised. Had I been too careless? Had someone been watching me all along? The cafe's warm ambience offered little solace as I scribbled notes in a worn leather journal, a habit that had become my refuge during turbulent times. I detailed every digital receipt, every email alert, every unsettling message I had received. Writing became a cathartic exercise, a way to externalize my fears and uncertainties. In those pages, I documented not just the technical details of the breach but the emotional toll it was taking on me, a chronicle of a life that had been divided between the public and the clandestine, between the safe and the exhilarating. It was in the midst of this internal chaos that I received another message, this one more detailed and personal than the others. It arrived as an email from an unknown sender with the subject line "Let's talk." The message was brief yet laden with implications. It stated that the sender was aware of my digital trail and that we needed to meet if I wanted to reclaim control over my narrative. The invitation was as chilling as it was enticing. It was as if someone had stepped out of the shadows to offer me a lifeline, or a trap. I hesitated, the decision weighing heavily on me. To trust a stranger who claimed to have the power to help me was a risk I wasn't sure I could afford, yet the possibility of turning the tables on my unknown adversary was too tempting to ignore. After several sleepless nights filled with restless deliberation, I decided to take the plunge. I arranged to meet the mysterious correspondent in a quiet, nondescript park at dusk, a neutral ground that would allow for anonymity and discretion. As I approached the meeting spot, my heart pounded in my ears, every step echoing the uncertainty of the path I had chosen. The park was nearly empty, its paths illuminated by soft, diffused streetlights and the fading glow of twilight. I scanned the area, searching for a figure who might be my potential savior or my worst enemy. A silhouette emerged from behind a cluster of trees, a person whose presence was unassuming yet exuded a quiet confidence. As I drew closer, I realized that this individual's eyes were sharp, observant, and not unkind. They introduced themselves simply as Alex, and their voice was calm and reassuring as they explained that they had been monitoring digital breaches like mine for years. According to Alex, there was a network of individuals who specialized in tracking digital footprints and safeguarding the privacy of those whose secrets had been compromised. Their message was one of solidarity, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this digital labyrinth. Alex offered to help me understand how the receipts had been leaked and to work on a strategy to contain the fallout. I found myself torn between skepticism and relief. Here was someone who claimed to understand the intricacies of digital privacy, someone who could help me navigate this perilous new reality. I decided to trust Alex, at least for the moment. Over the course of our conversation, Alex explained how the digital receipts could be exploited not just by opportunists but by organized entities looking to capitalize on private information. They described a world where every digital transaction, no matter how trivial it might seem, was a potential vulnerability, a gateway for those with the skills and intent to manipulate and control. As we spoke, I began to see my own situation in a new light. The digital receipts were no longer just personal records of a secret rendezvous, they were pieces of a larger puzzle, a mosaic of data that could be assembled by those with malicious intent. The realization was both terrifying and liberating. It meant that my experience was not isolated, that there was a systemic flaw in the way digital privacy was managed, one that affected countless individuals who thought their lives were securely compartmentalized. Alex and I spent hours discussing strategies, exploring the technical details of data encryption, and debating the ethical implications of our digital lives. It was a conversation that delved deep into the modern paradox of connectivity, how the tools designed to bring us closer could just as easily tear us apart. As the night wore on and the stars emerged in the cool, clear sky, I began to feel a renewed sense of purpose. Perhaps this breach, as invasive as it was, could serve as a catalyst for change, a chance to reclaim control over my own narrative and to challenge the invasive nature of our digital existence. In the days that followed, I worked closely with Alex to piece together a plan of action. We scrutinized every digital trail, every log entry that might provide insight into who had accessed my information. Our investigation was painstaking and fraught with moments of doubt, yet it also opened my eyes to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. I began to document not just my personal experience, but also the broader implications of living in a world where every action left a digital imprint. My journal became a testament to my journey, a record of both my vulnerability and my determination to rise above it. As I reflect on those early days of uncertainty, I realize that the breach of my digital receipts marked a turning point in my life. What had begun as a secret rendezvous at a luxury resort had spiraled into a full-blown confrontation with the realities of modern privacy. I was forced to confront the idea that in a world where everything is recorded, even the most intimate moments are never truly private. The digital receipts, once symbols of my clandestine indulgence, had become the very evidence of my exposure, a mirror reflecting both my hidden desires and the vulnerabilities that came with them. Standing on the precipice of this new reality, I felt a mix of fear, anger, and resolve. The realization that my private moments could be weaponized against me was a bitter pill to swallow, yet it also ignited a fierce determination to protect what little control I still had over my life. I began to see my situation not just as a personal crisis, but as a call to action, a reminder that in an age where every digital interaction is recorded, we must be ever vigilant about our own privacy. Now, as I sit here recounting these events, the memory of that fateful series of digital receipts is etched into my consciousness like a scar, a permanent reminder of the fine line between intimacy and exposure, between freedom and the relentless intrusion of technology. I have learned that every choice we make leaves a trace, a digital echo that can resurface when we least expect it. And while the journey ahead is fraught with uncertainty, I am resolved to take control of my narrative, to ensure that my secrets remain mine and that my voice is not silenced by the relentless march of technology. The past few weeks have been a whirlwind of late-night research, cautious phone calls, and whispered conversations with trusted allies. Each day brings new challenges and revelations, as I learn to navigate a world where privacy is a fragile, often elusive commodity. I know now that my secret rendezvous at the luxury resort, once a private escape into a world of passion and mystery, has become a turning point, a moment that has forced me to confront the vulnerabilities inherent in our digital age. I can only imagine what the future holds. There are risks, undeniably so, but also opportunities, a chance to reshape the narrative, to reclaim the parts of my identity that have been overshadowed by fear. And though the digital receipts may have betrayed me, they have also opened my eyes to the need for change, both in my personal life and in the broader context of our hyperconnected world. This is only the beginning of a long, uncertain journey. The secrets that were once safely locked away in the shadows are now illuminated by the harsh light of digital scrutiny. And yet, in this exposure, I have found a new strength, a determination to reclaim my story, to forge a path forward that is defined not by fear, but by the courage to live authentically in an age where every moment is recorded, every action logged. As I close this chapter of my story, I know that there are more challenges ahead, more secrets to confront, and more digital trails to navigate. But I also know that I am not alone. There are others like me, silently fighting to protect their privacy, to assert their right to live without constant surveillance. And in that collective struggle, I find solace and strength. My journey is far from over. With every digital receipt, every unwelcome notification, I am reminded that the fight for privacy is ongoing, and that my story, though marred by betrayal and exposure, is one of resilience, defiance, and the relentless pursuit of freedom in a world where every secret is just a click away. The days after that fateful meeting with Alex blurred into a disquieting mix of dread and determination. I found myself entrenched in a world where every digital echo carried the weight of potential exposure, and every shadow of an email notification threatened to unravel more of my carefully constructed life. With Alex's guidance, I began to rebuild my defenses, methodically changing passwords, securing accounts, and even investing in encrypted communication tools. Yet, no amount of technical fortification could erase the feeling of vulnerability that had seeped into every facet of my existence. Each morning, as I sipped my coffee and watched the city awaken, I was haunted by the lingering thought that my private escapades were not only out in the open but could be weaponized against me. I resolved to dig deeper into the origins of the breach. The digital receipts were more than mere proof of a secret rendezvous. They had become breadcrumbs leading me into a labyrinth of corporate malfeasance and cyber espionage. Late at night, I pored over every transaction detail, every timestamp, trying to discern a pattern, a clue as to who might have orchestrated this betrayal. In between moments of relentless research, the weight of loneliness pressed upon me. I recalled the clandestine passion that had defined that elusive night at the luxury resort, a night filled with whispered promises, secret glances, and an intimacy that defied the constraints of my everyday persona. That memory now clashed with the stark reality of digital footprints, and I was forced to confront the paradox of seeking solace in anonymity while inadvertently etching my desires into an indelible online ledger. Alex and I communicated through encrypted channels, our conversations a blend of technical jargon and raw emotion. They explained that in today's digital age, every transaction, no matter how discreet, was logged and stored in vast, interconnected systems. The receipts, once a byproduct of elite events, had become an open invitation for those skilled enough to exploit such vulnerabilities. Together, we began to trace the digital threads, contacting experts in cybersecurity, forensic analysts, and even old acquaintances who specialized in data privacy. Each conversation was a step deeper into a realm that I had once believed was reserved for faceless corporations and distant governments, a realm where my personal indiscretions were rendered public fodder for anyone with a curious mind. Amidst the technical discussions, I found myself grappling with a deeper, more personal turmoil. The exposure of my secret rendezvous had forced me to revisit memories that I had long tucked away, memories of a life lived on the fringes of societal norms, of nights when the forbidden became a sanctuary. I remembered the exhilarating thrill of stepping into that luxury resort after hours, the way the soft hum of conversation and the glint of candlelight had seemed to whisper promises of escape. That night had been a moment of liberation, a time when I allowed myself to break free from the stifling monotony of daily life. Now, however, it had become a double-edged sword, a symbol of both empowerment and vulnerability. One particularly restless evening, I ventured out into the city under the cloak of darkness. I needed a change of scenery, a break from the relentless barrage of digital notifications and anxious reconfigurations. Wandering through dimly lit streets, I found solace in the anonymity of the urban sprawl, a place where faces blurred into a collective tapestry of existence. In a quiet park, beneath a sky inked with stars, I sat on a worn bench and allowed my thoughts to drift. The cool night air carried with it a faint whisper of hope, a reminder that even in the midst of chaos, moments of beauty could be found. As I closed my eyes, I could almost hear the echoes of that secret night at the resort, a memory both tender and raw, urging me to reclaim my narrative. My internal journey was abruptly interrupted by a knock on my apartment door one early morning. Startled, I peered through the peephole to see a delivery person holding a plain, unmarked envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in crisp black font, a message that sent a shiver down my spine. The note read simply, "There are forces beyond your control. Trust no one." The handwriting was neat, but there was an unmistakable urgency in the words, as if someone had painstakingly measured every syllable for maximum impact. Panic mingled with a grim determination. I realized that my secret was not just in danger of exposure, it had attracted the attention of those who saw my vulnerability as an opportunity, a potential leverage in a game of shadows and manipulation. In the ensuing days, I became increasingly aware of a subtle shift in my surroundings. I noticed a car parked a little too long on my street, faces lingering in nearby cafes that seemed to watch me with quiet intensity, and anonymous calls that left me with a deep, unshakable sense of being observed. Every interaction, no matter how trivial, was now imbued with the possibility of danger. I began to suspect that the network of elite events I had once trusted was intertwined with darker currents, a world where powerful individuals used their access to exclusive venues not just for pleasure, but as a means of control and coercion. The luxury resort, once a temple of indulgence and escape, might have been more than it appeared. It was starting to feel like a stage for a grander, more insidious performance. As the pressure mounted, I reached out to an old friend from my past, someone who had always possessed a keen understanding of the undercurrents in both the digital and physical worlds. Over a long, tense phone call in a secluded corner of a quiet diner, I recounted the events of the past weeks, the digital receipts, the anonymous threats, and the creeping feeling of being watched. My friend listened intently, their voice steady and measured as they advised me to document everything and prepare for the possibility of a public confrontation. They warned me that in our modern era, secrets had a way of festering into scandals, and that my personal narrative might soon become fodder for those eager to capitalize on my misfortune. I began to compile my own dossier, meticulously gathering every piece of digital evidence and personal correspondence, every detail that painted a picture of my clandestine life. My journal, once filled with poetic musings about the thrill of secret escapades, now became a ledger of every suspicious email, every unusual login alert, and every whispered threat. With every entry, I felt a growing resolve to take back control of my story, to turn the tables on those who sought to exploit my vulnerabilities. It was a painful transformation, watching my private moments transmute into evidence in a high-stakes battle for my privacy and autonomy. The turning point came unexpectedly one rainy evening when I received another message from Alex, a more urgent, almost desperate plea to meet in person. We arranged to rendezvous at a modest, inconspicuous cafe that prided itself on privacy. As I waited by a window blurred by raindrops, I scanned the room for any sign of my confidant. When Alex finally arrived, their expression was grave, their eyes reflecting a storm of concern and determination. Over steaming cups of coffee, Alex revealed that their investigation had uncovered disturbing links between the digital breach and a shadowy collective of cyber operators who specialized in data manipulation for corporate and political gain. According to Alex, this network was capable of orchestrating breaches on a massive scale, using digital receipts and transaction records as part of a broader strategy to blackmail, control, and subvert those who dared to live outside the confines of their prescribed roles. The gravity of the situation settled over me like a leaden shroud. The realization that my personal indiscretions might be entangled in a web of corporate espionage and digital warfare was almost too much to bear. Yet, in that moment of overwhelming despair, a spark of defiance was ignited. I could no longer afford the luxury of silence or resignation. I had to confront this network head-on, not just to reclaim my own privacy, but to send a message to a world that thrived on exploiting the vulnerabilities of those who dared to step out of line. Over the next several weeks, Alex and I devised a plan, a delicate operation to trace the origins of the breach and expose the network behind it. It was a venture that required all of our resources, our wits, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. We began by infiltrating online forums, poring over encrypted chat logs and digital breadcrumbs left behind by operatives whose identities were shrouded in pseudonyms. I was plunged into a digital underworld where trust was scarce and every interaction was a potential trap. Each late-night conversation, each coded message, felt like a step closer to either salvation or ruin. As our investigation progressed, I found myself re-examining every aspect of my secret life. The memories of that night at the resort, once a source of unbridled passion and joy, now carried the bitter taste of regret and betrayal. I remembered the quiet intensity of our conversations, the way our eyes met and spoke in silent accord, and I wondered how something so deeply personal could be reduced to a series of digits and timestamps. It was a cruel irony, our most intimate moments, which we had once believed were shielded by discretion, were now being dissected by an uncaring digital archive. The very tools that had promised to connect us were now exposing us to forces far beyond our control. One particularly harrowing incident occurred when I received a cryptic voicemail late one night. The message was distorted, almost mechanical, but the words were chillingly clear: "Your secrets are currency. Prepare to pay the price." I replayed the message over and over, each iteration deepening the sense of impending doom. The call was traced to a number that, after much effort and the reluctant assistance of a trusted contact, turned out to be linked to one of the more notorious nodes in the cyber operator network. The realization that I had become a target in a dangerous game of digital extortion sent shockwaves through my already fragile sense of security. In a desperate bid to regain some semblance of control, I decided to confront the source of the leak directly. I arranged a meeting in a desolate part of the city, a location chosen for its lack of surveillance and anonymity. My heart hammered as I approached the designated meeting spot, a narrow alleyway illuminated by the harsh glare of a single streetlight. I was met by a figure whose presence was as elusive as the truth itself. Dressed in nondescript clothing, the individual's face was obscured by the shadow of a hood, and their voice was deliberately muffled. They claimed to be an insider, someone who had once worked for the organization behind the data breaches and had since defected, disillusioned by the ruthless exploitation of personal secrets. The conversation was terse and laden with danger. The insider detailed how the network used digital receipts and transaction records not only to blackmail individuals but also to manipulate market trends and political outcomes. Their words painted a grim picture of a world where privacy was sacrificed at the altar of profit and power, where the personal became political, and where even the most sacred moments of intimacy were commodified. I listened, my pulse rising with every revelation, as the insider described how my own data had been snared in a web of surveillance and control, a mere pawn in a larger, more sinister game. With the insider's information in hand, Alex and I returned to our digital war room, a cluttered space filled with monitors, laptops, and an array of makeshift tools pieced together from online tutorials and expert advice. We began the arduous process of cross-referencing data, isolating anomalies, and mapping out the network's digital infrastructure. Every breakthrough was accompanied by a fresh wave of anxiety, as we realized that the network was more deeply entrenched than we had ever imagined. The more we uncovered, the more I felt the creeping tendrils of paranoia, as if the very air around me had become laden with invisible threats. Yet, amidst the chaos and fear, there was a strange sense of empowerment. I was no longer merely a victim of circumstance, I had become an investigator, a guardian of my own narrative. Every email, every digital receipt that had once filled me with dread was now a clue, a stepping stone toward a larger truth. I found solace in the relentless pursuit of answers, even as the shadows of uncertainty loomed large. The journey had transformed me, forcing me to confront not only the external dangers but also the internal conflicts that had long simmered beneath the surface. I had to accept that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a necessary part of reclaiming control over my life. As the investigation neared a critical juncture, I knew that a reckoning was inevitable. The digital receipts that had betrayed my secret rendezvous were now weapons in a battle that extended far beyond my personal sphere. They were the keys to unlocking a vast conspiracy that threatened the privacy and autonomy of countless individuals. With Alex's unwavering support and the reluctant aid of former insiders, I prepared to take the next step, exposing the network in a way that would force the public to confront the dark underbelly of our digital age. I decided to compile everything into a comprehensive report, a dossier that detailed every aspect of the breach, every connection, every revelation. The process was both cathartic and terrifying. I wrote for hours on end, my fingers pounding on the keyboard as I recounted not only the technical details but also the emotional toll of living a double life in an era of relentless surveillance. In those long, sleepless nights, I rediscovered parts of myself I had long suppressed: the fierce desire to protect my privacy, the determination to stand up against exploitation, and the quiet courage to embrace my own imperfections. When the report was complete, I felt as though I was standing at the edge of a precipice. I knew that releasing such information would set off a chain reaction, one that could lead to legal battles, public scandals, and perhaps even personal retribution. Yet, I also knew that silence was not an option. The truth, once revealed, had the power to spark change, to force the architects of the digital surveillance state into the light. With trembling resolve, I sent the report to a trusted investigative journalist known for unearthing stories of corporate malfeasance and government overreach. The days that followed were a maelstrom of media inquiries, hushed conversations among powerful figures, and a growing public outcry over the misuse of personal data. I kept a low profile, moving through the city with a heightened sense of awareness, as if every passerby could be an informant or a spy. The revelation of the network's machinations sent shockwaves through the digital world, igniting debates about privacy, security, and the very nature of freedom in an interconnected society. In interviews conducted from behind blurred windows and with my voice disguised, I spoke not just as a victim, but as a reluctant whistleblower, a person who had paid dearly for a taste of forbidden freedom, only to see that freedom weaponized against me and countless others. In the aftermath of the exposé, I experienced a paradoxical mix of relief and loss. The immediate threat of digital retribution seemed to recede, replaced by a broader societal reckoning with the erosion of privacy. Yet, the price I had paid was incalculable. Friends and acquaintances began to distance themselves, wary of the potential fallout from being associated with someone who had dared to challenge the status quo. I found myself both liberated and isolated, a solitary figure caught between the promise of change and the burden of being a living testament to the dark side of our digital world. Looking back on the whirlwind of events, I realized that the journey from that single digital receipt to a full-blown confrontation with a powerful, hidden network was as transformative as it was terrifying. My secret rendezvous at the luxury resort, a moment of intimate escape, had inadvertently become the catalyst for an odyssey that reshaped my entire existence. In exposing the truth behind the digital receipts, I had peeled back the layers of my own identity, confronting both the beauty and the brutality of modern connectivity. The scars of that journey remain with me, a constant reminder that in a world where every action is recorded, true privacy is a myth, and every secret carries the potential to become a rallying cry for change. Now, as I sit in the quiet of my new, more secure apartment, a place where the shadows no longer seem as threatening, I reflect on the paradox of it all. The digital receipts that once betrayed my clandestine life had, in the end, given me something far more valuable than mere anonymity. They had ignited a fire within me to fight for a future where privacy is respected, where every individual has the right to live without the constant specter of surveillance. In that fight, I discovered an inner strength I had never known, a resilience forged in the crucible of modern vulnerability. The journey is far from over. Even now, as the public discourse shifts and new policies emerge in response to the revelations, I remain ever vigilant. Every time my phone buzzes or a new notification appears, I pause, remembering the long, arduous path that led me here and the sacrifices that were made along the way. I have learned that our digital lives, with all their conveniences and perils, demand an unwavering commitment to self-protection and truth. And though the road ahead is uncertain, I carry with me the memory of that fateful breach, a constant reminder that the fight for freedom and privacy is both deeply personal and inextricably linked to the future of our society. In the quiet moments before dawn, as I prepare for another day in a world forever changed by the collision of technology and desire, I find solace in the belief that every challenge, no matter how daunting, is an opportunity for transformation. The journey from digital betrayal to empowerment has been fraught with peril, yet it has also revealed the indomitable spirit that resides within me, a spirit that, despite the odds, continues to seek light in the darkness and hope amidst the chaos. And so, as I step forward into an uncertain future, I do so with the knowledge that my story, once defined by secrecy and exposure, has now become a testament to the relentless pursuit of truth, resilience, and the unyielding human desire for freedom.